Picture a pig. Now picture a superior pig. What does that look like? Well, for Pig Improvement Company, that's a simple answer. They've developed pigs that are resistant to the PRRS virus with the help of gene editing technology.
We can achieve the things that we're asking, but we're probably going to need technology to allow us to do it. And so that was the thing that drew me to this role and to this opportunity that we have now with being among the first gene edited products in livestock.
Today, I'm joined by Banks Baker from the Pig Improvement Company to find out what this means for the global pork industry. First of all, Banks, welcome to beautiful Davos. It's a pleasure to have you here joining us today.
Olivia, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Let's start by taking a look at you. You started out as a farmer and rancher. How did this really kickstart your interest in food systems more generally?
Yeah, and so I've been a student of agriculture for most of my life, and it's an exciting time right now for our industry. We're asking a lot of it, both from a sustainability and efficiency perspective. And now we're starting to see new technologies that are available to us that allow us to get better at an even faster rate, like gene editing technology, and we're going to talk a bit about that today.
So let's focus and turn our attention to PIC. Of course, this idea really started with 6 farmers in a pub many years ago. Tell us what the company is trying to achieve when it comes to the world of gene editing in livestock.
Yeah, and so some farmers in the White Hart pub in London had a conversation about the need to provide genetic improvement and to raise healthier animals. And that's what we've been doing for the last 60 years. But now we've got new technologies like gene editing, and we now have one that we're working to gain regulatory approval across the globe that allows our pigs to be completely resilient to the PRRS virus. And so now that technology is allowing us to do what we've been doing historically and extend that legacy in a very positive way.
Talk to us about why these pigs are superior. How are they better and who do they help and to support?
Yeah. And so I guess to take a step back, PRRS, Porcine Reproductive and Respiratory Syndrome virus, it's among the world's most costly, common, and devastating diseases facing pork producers around the world. And not just large producers and farms of all scales and sizes. And so this isn't just something that helps, one particular type of farmer. All farmers are dealing with this issue.
Is this something that you also saw as a farmer yourself?
Luckily, the pig operations that I manage, we never did have a PRRS outbreak. But it's extremely prevalent. And so close to 60% of herds in the United States at one time are infected with the PRRS virus. And just last year, there was a new quantification that PRRS costs the US industry $1.2 billion annually. And that number is going up significantly. And so PRRS is getting worse, not better. And so we need solutions that help us address it. I think during that time, as PRRS has gone to $1.2 billion of annual negative cost impacts, we've also seen that at a time where a lot of technologies have been introduced, like vaccines or other mitigating factors. And even in the face of those investments, the problem's not getting any better. And so that's what's exciting about our solution, which is a gene edit. And so we've got a gene editing technology where we use CRISPR-Cas9 technology to make a very specific edit to a part of the protein in a pig's DNA. And once we make that very specific edit, then the pig can no longer get the PRRS virus. So essentially we make an edit and a small protein is removed, and that small protein that's removed is where the PRRS virus binds into the animal itself. And when we remove that, the virus can no longer get into the pig, it can no longer replicate, and it makes the pigs completely resistant or resilient to the disease.
So to be clear, these genetically edited pigs look the same as regular pigs?
They do. They look exactly the same, they act exactly the same, and their meat composition is the same, and their taste is identical. And we've actually had to complete some peer-reviewed academic research as part of our regulatory findings for that. It's important to note that there's a difference between gene editing and GMO, genetic modification, where in GMO, there's an outside genetic that's been introduced, a transgenic DNA has been introduced from an outside species, Where in gene editing, in the PRRS-resistant pig case, we're specifically just making a very targeted deletion of a specific protein. And so nothing has been added. We're just making a very specific deletion. And so once we're able to do those in those founder populations, in the parents of the pigs that will actually end up going to market, those pigs don't actually end up being edited over and over again. And so once we have the grandparents and the parents that are edited, that is a recessive trait. And so once they've been edited and they've been breeded selectively after that, the trait carries on indefinitely. And so it's not like every single pig that goes to market has actually been gene edited exactly the same way at the beginning.
It seems like a mammoth task that you're working on, but just tell us, how is this really going to transform pig farming and also the livestock conditions?
Yeah, and so when you look at the problems that pork producers face, PRRS is one of the biggest risks. And as I said earlier, this isn't just for large producers. This is for producers and production systems, large and small, inside, outside, large and small. And so the benefits of this certainly are very clear at the farm production level, but we're seeing a real change in the demands that we've seen on agriculture. And so the PRRS-resistant pig, although there's certainly a benefit for the producer, there's also a benefit for all of us in the value chain, all the way from the pork producer to the consumer at the end of the value chain. And so some of the research that we've been able to do really credibly and comprehensively is being able to quantify those benefits. And some of the strongest benefits that we've seen are around, of course, improved animal welfare. When we can remove a devastating disease, the pigs have a better health and welfare outcome. There's significant decreases in the need for antibiotic use. And then there's also the sustainability benefits. But those things are the things that the consumers, when we do our consumer research surveys and we have conversations with the consumer, are the things that they're telling us that they care about. And so it's really important for us as a company, and to be among the first to introduce this gene editing technology, to make sure that everybody knows that this isn't just some benefit that accrues all the way back at the production level. This is something that benefits all of us and it benefits society as a whole. And we're just getting started. This is just the first application of what gene editing may be within agriculture, but there's certainly going to be others that follow in our wake.
And so on top of that, what are the other sustainability benefits that we can see from creating this, what you call a superior pig?
Yeah, and as we all know, sustainability is becoming one of the top drivers across all industries. And so we've seen commitments across corporations and governments and others as well. And we're all trying to figure out, how do we achieve these ambitious commitments? And historically, genetics have never been utilized as an intervention that allow us to mitigate the emissions associated with livestock production. And so PIC, we're actually developing a new type of carbon intervention called genetic carbon. Those are greenhouse gas emissions that are mitigated through genetic improvement, including those that can be achieved through gene editing. And so we've gone through a very comprehensive and complex process of completing a life cycle assessment, an LCA, that allows us to isolate the specific environmental impact associated with a product, in this case, PRRS and gene editing, and allows us to understand what is the environmental impact of being able to utilize this technology. And so we've completed LCAs across our traditional genetics, and they provide a 7.5% reduction compared to the industry average, both in North America and in Europe. I'm happy to say that our LCAs are fully conformant with the International Organization of Standardization, and our base model has actually recently undergone full academic peer review. This is very unusual in the genetics business. We're the first genetics company that we're aware of that's been able to quantify these benefits. And that's really exciting, and it allows us to be able to say our product has this environmental outcome and provides this environmental outcome to society. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't allow all of those corporations and governments and everyone else that's made these commitments to be able to claim and invest in genetics as a reduction intervention. And so we actually have a project right now that we're working on in the United States where we're creating a standardized format that allows corporations and governments to claim the use of genetic improvements and to claim this genetic carbon that we just talked about as a credible and quantifiable reduction to their greenhouse gas footprint. And so that's a really exciting piece. In a previous role, that was my job, was trying to identify reduction opportunities across all animal species. And this is one of the ones that really is interesting because it provides an immediate production efficiency, and then it also allows us to provide a claimable GHG reduction on the back end of it.
PRRS-resistant pigs are actually among the first gene-edited livestock, but they're not going to be the last. So just walk us through that. What do you see the place of gene editing in the future and its place in society?
Yeah, and that's a really important one that I try to reiterate as often as I can for folks, is that gene editing is much more than the PRRS-resistant pig. The PRRS-resistant pig is gene editing, but really we're the first technology in a suite of the way this technology is going to be applied around the world. And so this is likely going to be the way that we address most of the challenging diseases and viruses that affect animal agriculture, but we're already seeing applications in human health as well. And so you may have seen, even just last year, there was approval from the UK government for a sickle cell anemia gene editing therapy. The next month, the FDA approved one as well. And we're seeing a lot of additional investment and development for other applications of gene therapy in the human health side. Things like being able to address certain types of cancers. We talked about sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis. There's some really interesting applications for inherited hearing and sight loss. And so really we're just now starting to understand what the implications of gene editing are going to be, not just for humans, but for all of mammalian health. And so it's important for us as a company that we introduce this technology in a responsible and transparent way, because we know how important this technology is going to be, and we don't even understand kind of the totality of that comment just yet.
Thanks. I'd love to finish up with a look at yourself. After being in this company, being in this role, and exposure to all of these critical issues, how has that really changed your relationship with food? When you go into a restaurant, when you go into a supermarket, what do you think about now?
Yeah, I've been a student of agriculture for most of my adult life, and I've spent most of my career trying to understand agriculture from as comprehensive and complex a view as possible. And I've now been within major supply chains. I've been the one making commitments, and I've been the one raising animals, the ones dealing with actual health issues. And so being able to now see these new technologies that come out that allow us to address some of the most pressing issues that the industry, really society, are facing, and being able to have this solution and to be among one of the first, it's a humbling experience, but also we understand just how important that is. And so, when I look kind of down the road, I think that gene editing becomes ubiquitous. I think that it ends up becoming something that is a part of our daily lives, whether it be in human health or in the way that we treat animal diseases itself. So it's an exciting time, and I really can't wait to see what the future holds and brings for us.
It seems that we're really only just scratching the surface here. Thank you so much for joining us here today in Davos.
Olivia, thank you for having me.
PIC is convinced that high-quality swine genetics will lead to a host of benefits: improved animal welfare, lower emissions, and reduced need for antibiotics. Now, the next step is to secure regulatory approval and ultimately bring the pigs to market.